Yo guys, so for any of you who have just watched my Instagram post, I did post out there that there is a very special occasion going on. These are black men, who are within the education sector. We have the experience this week where one of my young persons, boom. Oh, see who is here, yeah?
What are the chances,
man himself.
What are the chances? And I was just looking at something you tagged me in this morning.
Yo. I was just making sure that these guys are also getting online.
Yeah? Gotta get the logo, everything, the venue, they done it sick.
We got the Godfather himself here, yeah? The man. Guys, I will have a quick spill with the guys who are more or less, meeting people, welcoming people, just to make sure that, they give us a quick intro for everybody else who may want to reach out to them in regards to our children, their education, and everything else that you want to know, especially from the teacher's point of view. Boom.
The boss himself. You guys should be proud of yourselves.
How you doing? I'm Jordan. I'm one of the fellow teachers of Black Men Teach. This is our conference today where we're targeting reflective aspirations. This is an opportunity for us to bring black teachers, men and fellow black teachers into one space where we can network, talk amongst each other and give guest speakers an opportunity to broaden our horizons and speak about their experiences and what we can do going forward to make change in the world. So this is something that we've come up with within a 6 month to a year period where we came together by meeting through social media and then eventually streaming onto Zoom or Google Meet, where we've had many conversations of how we can raise aspirations of black teachers and black men who teach, just to broaden everyone's horizons with regards to the youth of today, showing that we are represented in this field and we are here to stay and hopefully grow the population of black teachers. As you may be aware, there is less than 1% or less than 2% of black teachers at the moment, and what we're hoping is that having events like this can help promote raising that percentage overall and just make us very aspirational and make us represented.
Hi, my name is Emmanuel. I'm an assistant head teacher here at Eastbury Community School.
Let's invite Emmanuel to tell us about his journey. When we are talking about black people having very, challenging experiences in the education system, this is a person who had his experience, but guess what? He is now an assistant head teacher. It can work for everybody. Stand by whilst we introduce Emmanuel.
Growing up, I didn't see many black male teachers, and I definitely didn't see any black head teachers. I do think it had an impact on my experience in school, just because I felt like I didn't have someone that represented me, understood my culture. Being Nigerian, coming from a particular community, living in East Ham, I think it was really important to have at least someone in the school that could kind of understand that, and I didn't really get that. So I think for me, the drive to becoming a head teacher, I think ultimately is to build schools that are ultimately going to be the hub of our community. I think schools are incredibly important. That is essentially why I got into teaching. I don't know, for me this is quite a humbling experience, I think, being in a room full of black educators. I know we've got women in here, but I think specifically black men, because growing up there were a few times I'd be surrounded with black men and it wasn't always in a positive way. And even growing up in my house, I had a father, but I didn't have someone like father with me. So I think I spent a big chunk of the 32 years of living on this earth, searching and seeking for male guidance from men within our community, and I didn't get it. And I think it did have a massive impact in my school experience. Like I said in the video, I experienced my first school exclusion when I was in year 5. I grew up in a very, very racist, toxic area, Bermondsey in southeast London, if you know it. We had Millwall Football Club just 5 minutes from my house. They would have National Front marches. I think they're the equivalent to the BNP now. They would have National Front marches on on a road called Jamaica Road, and we were literally advised and told, do not walk out on Saturday because you're going to have the BNP, sorry, the National Front marching on that Saturday. And when I experienced my first school exclusion, one of the decisions that my mum had to make was to move me to East London, and that's when I started a new primary school called Vicarage Primary School in East Ham. And it was honestly the most amazing year that I'd had up until that point. And there was no formula, there was nothing I could point to that made it so special, other than the fact that I had an amazing teacher who was warm, she was caring. It was an extremely diverse borough anyway, and I was around children that came from all kinds of backgrounds. And then I moved on to secondary school, 10 minutes away from where I went to school. And there's a common theme with my educational experience, which is I was always the boy with potential, but for whatever reason I wasn't fulfilling it. And I don't know how many of you in here are from a West African background or come from Nigeria, but my dad, the only event in school that my dad ever turned up to, despite the fact I've played football since I was in primary school, was parents' evening. And for parents' evening he even had a special suit, that's how much. And everybody in the house, even if they weren't invited, were going to parents' evening that evening. And every parents' evening, all he was ever told essentially was, yeah man, he's a bright boy, he's a good boy, you know, but it's just not working out, you know, he's not fulfilling his potential. And a critical point came in my educational experience where I was in year 10, and I'm not even going to go into the scenario, I've said it so many times that it could be quite traumatic, but I was excluded again, and that exclusion then turned into an internal exclusion. But because it was the year of my GCSEs, I was allowed to take my GCSEs, but I was doing it in an inclusion group with mentors, with my best friend at the time who I'd been excluded with. And what ended up happening was I left school on 4 A to C GCSEs. And so that had a ripple effect because it meant I went to college, sixth form college, not attached to my school. And I couldn't take my A-levels like the rest of my peers. I was a year behind everybody. I was now having to retake my maths because that was one GCSE in particular that I failed. So already there was a ripple effect, and all my life again, and the background that I'm from, it was a normal threat to hear my parents say, we're going to send you back to Nigeria because we don't understand. You know? And my parents have a massive part to play in my experience. And the reason I say that is because I work with a lot of people who have a privilege that they don't understand as a privilege, and that is education. And from as long as I can remember, the first thing that my dad would always say to me is, son, if I had an education like you have an education, we wouldn't be here today. And that even makes me quite emotional to hear that, because I believe that even with my dad's flaws and our very difficult relationship, he always recognised and understood that we had something of gold mine here, and that was education. My dad came from a very, very poor background, came to the UK amongst all of his siblings, was the only one that decided to come to the UK in the 80s, and he just found a way. No formal education, no nothing. Didn't have any pairs until he actually made pairs, and many of them weren't the kind of pairs he wanted to make, but he had to make a way somehow. My mum, on the other hand, has a very different experience. She comes from a royal lineage actually, where she comes from, her granddad was actually the king, the Oba of his state. But that family made a decision that actually you didn't need to have an education because she was a woman. So when they came to this country, despite their different experiences, they were seen as second-class citizens, and they couldn't have the opportunities to do the things that they've always aspired to do because they didn't have that one thing, which is education. And so I think you can insult to injury. The summer in which I was now going to start my A-levels, which was my second year of college, the best friend that I was excluded with when I was in year 10 tragically passed away in a car accident with two other friends, and there were two survivors in that car accident. We all went to school together, lived in the same road, known them since I was about 10 years old. And so that again impacted my educational experience. And I started off my second year of college, but my first year of A-levels in the worst way possible, because I basically didn't attend most of my courses up until about January. And again, parents' evening was very significant, because when my dad turned up to the parents' evening, that was when he found out that all that time I'd been leaving the house, I wasn't actually going to my lectures, my classes, my lessons. And that was probably the first time we had an honest conversation about, I guess, how he could support me. Because again, when my best friend passed away and two of my other friends passed away, at the age of 17, I went through what I didn't realise obviously was depression, and my family's response to that unfortunately wasn't the best. You know? And I think it was only a number of months after my dad then realised that actually we need to put something in place to help you. So I pushed through. Anyway, long story short, I pushed through. I still messed up with college. I didn't leave with particularly good grades, and I was able to scrape through to university through clearing. And I went to Kingston University, and Kingston University was the first time I tasted educational success. At the age of 22, I didn't know what it felt like to leave an educational system or institution in this country and know what it felt like to say, well done, congratulations, you've done us proud, or leave with a significant certificate that actually showed that I participated. And so I studied criminology with sociology. I left with a 2-1 degree, and like I said, the first person in my family to receive a degree. That for me was obviously an incredibly important experience, but for my parents, and I really only did it for them, to be honest, I made them incredibly proud. But then I did what many young people unfortunately are going to do today, which is I went to university with no plan. I had no idea. I liked watching, what was that show called? Criminal Minds, CSI. That's what I watched. So I thought I want to study criminology. I love law and I love sociology. I love the theory part of that. So I thought criminology, law, sociology, all of that makes sense. And so I left university with no plan, no idea what I was going to do with myself. And like I said in the video, I just trained to be a sports coach, and I was delivering football clubs in schools across Tower Hamlets. And long story short, as I said in the video, my career came to be what it is now. I'm not going to go through that. But I think one of the key things that I'm always going to refer back to from a very humble point of view, irrespective of my position, is the question why. And I get asked that question quite a lot in different spaces. And I always go back to the fact that the only reason why I continue to train, even though I had no intention and no desire to be a teacher, was because I recognised what was missing within education. I recognised what I missed personally. And like I said in that video, I went to school and I can maybe name 3 black teachers that I remember seeing, and I maybe was taught by one of them, and only 2 of them were men. So I knew first things first, I wanted to be the change that I wanted to see in education, but I also wanted to represent the young people that I saw who were coming through those school doors, and every single time they were saying they had very little chance. Perfect example, this person here was very significant. You'll see that everything I talk about is just significance, because that is literally what life is about. And there's a young boy called Jesse, don't know where he is today, but he pretty much changed my life. And when I became a teaching assistant, the first thing that they did is they brought a young black boy who was in year 5 to me, just finished year 5, was about to start year 6, and they said, this boy's got ADHD, didn't even know what ADHD was at the time, behavioural issues and complex behavioural needs. And so what we want is for you to support this young man. He's not likely to finish his SATs. And by the way, just to let you know, if he ever blows up and he has a temper or whatever, just ask the whole class to leave. We do it all the time. Leave the class to him to smash it up. And if he needs some time, make sure he's gone outside, he's got a football. And that was literally his educational experience. Long story short, I worked with this young man for about a year and a half. He finished year 6 with decent enough grades, and I wasn't able to see what he went on to do after that because he left to go on to secondary school. He also played for my football team outside of that, and that was when I realised the impact that I could have. So when I became a teacher and qualified to be a teacher, very, very tough journey, one of the worst years of my life, training to be a teacher. I made a very conscious decision very, very early on. I said to myself, I'm not working in a mainstream school. I didn't like the politics, didn't like the people, didn't like authority at the time. I just didn't like a lot of things. So I said to myself, there's no point continuing here. And they were offering me a place. I trained where I went to work as a TA. I said, no, I don't want to do that. So what happened was that September, they created a role for me as a cover teacher. And I spent the 6 months thinking, oh, this is great. I still get to lead football. I cover lessons here and there. I'm also a mentor. It's a very kind of hybrid role. And by the time we got to December, I realised I'm quite unfulfilled. I'm actually a qualified teacher, but I've still got people looking at me as if I'm just anybody. I'm not doing certain things. I don't have a voice in the staff room. Just class like politics. So what I did from about February, March is I emailed every single alternative provision, SEND school and PRU that I could think of. Just emailed them, searched them online, emailed the main contact and just said, listen, I want to start my NQT year the following September. Do you have a position or something available for me to come for? And only one school got back to me. And I remember I went to visit the school, my school gave me permission to do so. And I walked through those doors And as I walked through the foyer, I remember seeing the head of the secondary school restraining a secondary pupil, and as he's restraining him, the young man saying to him, don't come here, he's a paedophile," whilst trying to spit at him. And I thought, interesting. So I carried on walking through the school, and long story short, what I saw that day was enough for me to say, this is where I need to be. You know, it was class sizes of no more than 8 children. There was 2 or 3 adults within the classroom. I spent most of the day in the primary department, and I saw people that weren't even qualified teachers teaching the most amazing lessons. Children engaged, but children that were quirky. You could tell they weren't mainstream kids, you know. And at the end of that day, the head teacher, she emailed me and she said, "Listen, it was great having you here today. You know, staff have said quite a lot of good stuff. The kids seem to love you. If I was to unofficially offer you a role here, would you take it?" I said, "If you unofficially offered me a role, I'll unofficially accept it." I'll speak to my head teacher and see what she says. So they were able to fashion out a deal, unfortunately, because I also had someone I call an advocate in my head teacher. She sanctioned the opportunity for me to be able to start that school in June, so it gave me a term to work in this school, which was incredibly impactful. And then in September, I then started there as an NQT. And the reason why that was important, because I remember when the executive head of that school appointed me, first thing he said is, "Manny, when you come to this school, don't get comfortable." And I was thinking, well, how do you say that to someone that's just started? And he was just like, "You're young, and you're probably going to get comfortable here." And he was right. There were people that had been there for 25 years, 30 years, 17 years, they were coasting. And he was like, "Whilst you're still young, get everything that you're going to get from this place, and then go on to somewhere else. And then if you want to come back to alternative provision, SEND provision, do that." And I said, "Okay, cool." And he also told me that I was the first NQT that they've ever appointed in 25 years. And I knew that for me that was quite important, because it tells you that most people don't necessarily think about what they want to do at the very beginning. They do it halfway through. And I knew from the very beginning what I didn't want, and I knew exactly what I wanted. And to be fair, if I didn't do that, I don't know if I would have been in a profession this long, because I would have been in a setting where I would have felt inadequate. I would have had people judging me. And you have to remember, every school is different. So even if it was another experience in another mainstream school, it could have been better. But I'd seen enough to say, this isn't where my strengths are. It's not where my skills are. It's not what I'm passionate about. Let me go and pursue that. And so that's what I did. And when I started, because of that word that the executive head teacher had given to me, I did something I wouldn't have normally done, which is I became forward thinking. Now, there was a great program, this was the year of 2016, I believe, called Diverse Leaders. I'm not sure if anyone's heard of it. It was actually funded by the DFE, and it was held in Crystal Palace, Harris, which is South London. So I signed up for it, and over that period of time on that course, again, another significant life-changing moment for myself. I remember attending, and I saw Paul Mundy Castle. Didn't know him before. He spoke. Nadine Bernard, 32, 33-year-old black head teacher. I had never seen this before. And I remember thinking, first of all, South London's great, because I was thinking this must just be a South London thing. But then secondly, I thought to myself, there's actually people that are in the positions I thought didn't exist. And I grew up in Newham. I worked in Tower Hamlets. I also now worked at the time in Redbridge. It's a multicultural, diverse, these are diverse boroughs, and every single person that was above me in terms of the senior leaders were all white. It didn't add up. And in an area where Tower Hamlets, the children that I taught, there are more people outside of Bangladesh living in Tower Hamlets than anywhere else. You'll find more Bangladeshi people there. So for me, it just didn't make sense how that wasn't representative in the schools and the classrooms. So anyway, long story short, I went in that course, and one of the first things they said is you make yourself a 5-year plan. Now, I don't necessarily agree that you should make yourself a 5-year plan for the purpose of senior leadership, but I do think making a plan in itself is quite important, and I did that. And one of the courses that I did was basically making a 5-year plan for the purpose of senior leadership, because it was a leadership course. And they said you need to think about your route. So there's different routes to senior leadership. So as you know, from a practical point of view, you could go through the curriculum point of view, you could go through teaching and learning, you can go through the pastoral route. Now, I worked in a special school. At that point, I would say I wasn't a specialist, but I knew SEND pretty well compared to other teachers. So I recognized that actually the best thing for me to do was to go through the SEND route. So after that course, the next year, I went to my head teacher and said, I want to qualify to be a SEND. They were looking at me like, why would you want to do that? First of all, in a SEND school,
it's not required to have a Senko like you would in a mainstream school. So they're like, why would you do that? I just said, it's because my career development is something I want to do. Is that something you would, sponsor me for? They said yes. So I did it. The next year, obviously, we don't require a Senko, so I just led on a project. I was a parental engagement lead. But again, I did it because I knew what I wanted to do in a couple of years. Long story short, an opportunity came up in a school for me to apply for an assistant head teacher role. I did so, and guess what it was that actually helped me for that particular role in that interview? The fact that I'd actually not only worked in a SEND school, but also had a Senko qualification. And that's why the actual process of having a plan is important, because every single course that I went on, from the point in which I became an AQT, was all for the end goal. Now, I'm not at my end goal, and I know I said in that video, my ambition is to be to be a head teacher. All my career, I've always said I don't want to be a head teacher, because just like when I was a teaching assistant, I didn't really want to be a teacher. I associated it with tiredness, grumpiness, marking, books, low pay, whatever it was, and yet I still found myself in it, and I feel like that was God's divine intervention. And again, at the very point in which I had got this position, I also run a charity program. I'm one of the directors of a charity program called the Reach Out Project, and that program is actually how I first met Janai, because we went into that school where we had young boys who were either on the brink of exclusion, disengaged, fights, potential counterlands, brothers that were in and out of prison, all sorts. And I wanted to start thinking about maybe doing that now as my full-time thing, because I was getting a bit tired of education. You have those moments every now and again. And so before I'd even applied for this role, I'd already started having talks about just going for the charity sector full-time. And then what happened was, this job that I had applied for, I got an interview for it, so I thought, okay, cool. Let me go to the interview. And again, another reason why going on leadership courses or courses is important. The course that I was attending that year, note it down, stepping into leadership. Again, it prepared me for what was about to happen next. Because Diana Osabi, if you don't know about her, you need to find out about her. Go on the course, Courageous Leadership. She was the main facilitator of that course, and everyone on that course was aspiring to be an SOT at some point within the next couple of years. And the most important aspect of that course was they taught you many things, like how to share your story, discussing yourself, not from a brand point of view, but like selling yourself when it comes to CVs, etc. But the most powerful thing in that course was they partnered you with a mentor, and then that mentor gave you 3 or 4 quality sessions where you could prepare yourself genuinely for like an interview, CV, whatever it was. And my mentor happened to be a black male primary school teacher in Angel, and it was just by chance. And then what he did, which was very special, is he then said, actually, my head teacher, who's an Asian woman who's really for this kind of stuff, she's actually going to come with me to prep for an interview. So I did an interview prep with this head teacher, with my mentor, and lo and behold, everything that they taught me in that interview, all the tips, the strategies, the things they asked me to discuss, when I went to my interview, first interview I've ever had for a senior leadership role, I got the role. Yeah. So I say that to say that it's not because of my vision, my drive, my purpose, my skills. There probably might be a better teacher out there, a better whatever, but it's because there was preparation in all of that, and there was plan. So I'm going to leave it there because I want to give an opportunity for people to ask questions, but also because I'm going over. But if there's anything I want to leave you with, it's first things first is your why. Always remember your why. Now, when I read the book, Start with Why. Simon Sinek. When I read that book, it was transformative, because when you know your why, you then start to question my how, and then it goes to when, where, and plan. And that was another thing I learned from that first course I did as an NQT. So just started. First thing they said is start with why. So the why part is always important, because when I've had my worst days, my down days, when I'm like, why am I even listening to this person? Like, why am I even coming in and I've left at 6 and they're still asking me about certain things? I always have to remember my why. I'm not doing it for these people. I'm doing it because I had a particular purpose, and that's what I'm going to be driven by all the time. Another thing I'm going to leave you with is, don't be led by passion, be purposeful. Because passion dwindles. There's days where you feel up for it, you're going to have a great day, and then there's other days where you're going to be like, I'm not up for it today. I'm not feeling this. I don't like the people that I work for. I'm not feeling the school. And the reason why being purposeful is important is because you plan with purpose. With passion, you're just being motivational. And those things for me are incredibly important. Last thing I'm going to say is there's an important and great book I'm reading at the moment, and it's called Ego is the Enemy. And if not for that book this year, I might not even still be in my position, because like you, I make mistakes, and there's some moments where I thought to myself, no, I'm going to do this because this is right, this is justice, I need to do it for black people. And actually I was leading with ego, and it could have been incredibly detrimental to my career. And so at the very heart of Ego is the Enemy, it's telling you just work, just be the very best in whatever it is you're aspiring for. Be the best teacher, don't be the last one to hand in the reports. Be the first one to ask questions, be the first one to go and say, can I go on this course? Be the very best, and when you put hard work with determination and you know your why, you will achieve whatever it is that you want to achieve, despite the setbacks, because you're going to get setbacks and you're going to get failures. So, I know I've gone over time, I hope that was okay, and I'm also happy to answer any questions if they can make sense. Yes?
Yes, just a quick one. You mentioned your why. I would like to know, what was your main why?
That was the reason that I said, well, I'm going to have to be that and be in a position where I can make sure people that look like me, that come from where I come from, don't go through that experience just because that's just what the system is like. And then again, representation. I learned more and more as I was in the field that actually me being a black male teacher in the building, in the classroom, walking past children that I might not ever speak to, had significance, and I always remember that as well. So those two I would say. Yeah.
So mine's a kind of a two-pronged question. One is, how did you overcome your fear of joining a system, mainstream system? Because I'm in that situation where I've worked in education for 5 years and the system just isn't rigged for black men. There's so many negatives, microaggressions within the workplace. It makes it almost detrimental to my mental health to work in school. However, my why is the children. My second part of that question is, with a recent report saying that 44% of teachers want to leave the profession in 5 years, how again do you overcome that negative aspect of the education system?
So there's two different. First one, it was advocates and support. The people that pushed me to be a teacher was my head teacher, white South African lady. She saw something in me I didn't see in myself. She said, "Manny, you got to do it." You know, she'd see me teach lessons. I was a cover teacher here and there. She was like, "You can't be comfortable, Manny. You're going to be great." And I couldn't see what she was seeing, because I was like, first of all, I'm not going to be a teacher, but why is it that you're saying that? Second person that was an advocate was my uni facilitator, because when I trained to be a teacher, I had a horrible experience. I was going to say a terrible mentor, I'm trying to be more compassionate these days because you never know what people are going through, but she didn't support me at all, or not as much as I would need that support. And halfway through that year, I said to my uni facilitator, I'm going to quit. I'm tired of this, and I've told you many times, this is not an enjoyable experience. I don't think this is for me. And she said, "Manny, hold on." She said, again, white lady, Bridget, amazing woman. She said, "Manny, at the very end of this, you got 6 months left to go, whatever it was." She said, if you want to go be an ed psych or do mentoring, whatever, at least you're going to have the qualification at the end of it, and then you're going to give yourself an opportunity. But she did something practical, and she made sure that my next placement was in a great school with a great mentor for that 6 weeks. And that again was another significant point. I saw great practice, I saw great support. I then had the confidence to now get through the next couple of months, even though I was going back to my old school. So again, it was advocates, people pushed me. And then I had my girlfriend, who was my wife at the time. That year, I went through suicidal attempts, depression. I suffered from chronic insomnia for 4 years. So my health was at its very lowest in that particular year, 2014, 2015. And if not for my partner and a praying mum, it's impossible that I would have done anything even worth taking note of without that support system. So it's never about me. The second part of your question, the thing that keeps me in it, despite many feelings and sentiments that I have similar to yours, right now I think generally is still mainly my why, but my faith in God. Because there comes a point where you have to, you require strength from somewhere else, And for some people, that might be your family support, it might be your partner, it could be just a ridiculous drive like Kanye West, where it's like, despite what anyone says or does, I'm going to get there. I don't have that Kanye West as much as I'd like to. So when I have my down days, I've got to remember that this is about purpose, and I feel like God's called me to do what I do. And there are days and times where I've applied for jobs in Dubai that aren't even in the same position. Because it's great money, it's a step down, I couldn't care less, it's 4 days a week. Why would I care about this? Better pay than what I'm doing now. And I've turned it down, and that was as recent as May. Bit of a lie, I turned it down partly because my wife said it was too soon to travel out. They said August the 15th I had to start, we come back from Bermuda August the 12th, and she was like, man, I can't do it, whatever. But I do feel like, again, God intervention, because I'm a man of faith, that God was also saying, that's how you feel, but trust me again, like I've had to trust him other times. And when doors have closed, or I've said no, or they've said no, something better has always come. And more importantly, irrespective of all of that, is that the resilience, the development, the character, everything that I'm learning, when I do eventually leave this place, because I won't be there forever, it might be 6 months, it might be a year, it could be 2-3 years, you never know how things work out. I won't learn all the things that I've learned, if not for the fact that I'm going through this experience. So I remember that in suffering, it's guaranteed, you can't avoid that, and there's always a process of development within that. And then on top of that, when it's like, I'm tired of that nonsense, it's God. It's my Bible, it's my prayer that reminds me, you need to start meditating on the things that's actually going to elevate your mindset. So.